Manx Radio's Update with Christian Jones.
Hello, Fastermy, good evening. It's 5 o'clock and welcome to Update here on Manx Radio. A 30-minute snapshot of all the latest news, sport and travel that you need to know happening here on the Isle of Man. Coming up, government is looking to introduce a new tax to tackle increasing healthcare costs. We'll continue to get reaction from those who've long been campaigning in favour of assisted dying after a historic moment when the bill was passed earlier this week. And is the end in sight for untreated sewage being pumped into the sea in Peel? As always, do get in touch if you want to comment on anything you hear. Text 166 177 or email studio@manxradio.com. First of all, though, let's cross over to Lewis Foster, who has the latest headlines. Faster, my Lewis.
Faster, my. Starting with the mountain road, which remains closed following a head-on collision between two vehicles near Kate's Cottage this afternoon. Fire crews from Douglas and Ramsey freed the occupants of the vehicles using cutting equipment before they were seen to by paramedics. The route is closed in its entirety. We'll bring you any updates as soon as we receive them. Elsewhere, the Treasury Minister hopes proposals for a new tax will provide longer-term solutions to the challenges facing healthcare spending on the island.
The healthcare service needs more money in the future. We know that we've got a slightly older population, and we know that the cost of drugs and new treatments is going up.
A 12-week public consultation on proposals for an NHS levy opened this morning. Alex Allenson says the tax could be applied to different forms of income and would be separate to income tax. The Isle of Man Fire and Rescue Service has issued a warning for owners of Ford Cougar plug-in hybrid electric vehicles. It says the car manufacturer has told customers not to charge the battery under any circumstances due to a potential fire hazard. In the latest international news, French President Emmanuel Macron has announced that France and Britain will send a reassurance force to Ukraine once a peace deal with Russia has been agreed. Volodymyr Zelensky says he wants America to be stronger. At least 5 people have been stabbed in central Amsterdam. One person has been arrested, but Dutch police say the motive for the attack is unclear. And the Queen has tried her hand at being a camera assistant on the set of crime drama Trigger Point. Camilla was invited to watch filming in northwest London as part of ITV's 70th anniversary. Those are the headlines. We'll have the news at 6 o'clock.
Thanks for that, Lewis. Now let's take a quick look at the weather this evening, brought to you by Manx Glass and Glazing. Rain arriving this evening, turning heavy at times before clearing overnight. If we look into tomorrow, though, mainly dry in the morning with some sunshine, then a risk of showers developing, especially in the afternoon or evening. Fresh to strong westerly wind and maximum temperature around 10 degrees Celsius.
Manx Glass and Glazing can supply and install single, double and triple glazing. Call 674 573 or visit the showroom on the Snugborough Trading Estate.
Simply income protection from Kestrel Insurance. A choice of benefits. Simple underwriting and peace of mind with a regular income for up to 2 years if you're unable to work due to illness or injury. Kestrel Insurance is registered with the Isle of Man Financial Services Authority.
Carpetland, the carpet specialist with the island's best value carpets in stock, often fitted within a week. Furnitureland for 3-piece suites, dining and living room furniture and a selection of amazing beds. Carpetland and Furnitureland, West Street, Ramsey.
Making life easier with Manx Mobility at the top of Summer Hill. Are you looking for a stair lift? Look no further with Which Magazine's #1 recommended stair lifts. Now provided by Manx Mobility. Access BDD stair lifts. Call us today on 200 680.
The exclusive Karcher store is open with thousands of products, accessories and parts in stock. For Karcher sales and service, Hersham Electrical, Shipyard Industrial Estate, Ramsey.
You're listening to the Isle of Man's quintessential daily news and current affairs roundup. Update on Manx Radio.
4 minutes past 5 now, and government wants to hear your thoughts on its plans to introduce a new tax to fund the island's health services. A 12-week public consultation on the NHS levy opened this morning. Now, Treasury says the money raised through the tax would be ring-fenced for health and separate from any existing income tax calculations. The Minister, Alex Allinson, has been speaking to Sean Cowper.
When I brought in the increase in income tax, I said it was going to be a temporary measure while we looked at other alternatives. And what we can do with an NHS levy, which is different to standard income tax, is apply it to different forms of income and apply it in a different way. We can therefore raise more money, but also reduce the headline rate of income tax, which is particularly important for people living here or people who want to relocate here, that they see that. So it's looking at a sustainable way of raising that extra revenue that we need. And this is genuinely a consultation to see what people are prepared for, to see what people want in terms of funding our NHS. I've got no preconceived ideas. We haven't written any legislation yet. We're waiting to hear from the people of the Isle of Man the best way of funding our healthcare service.
You mentioned that this has taken a little while to come from the first idea in the budget last year through to now. We know that healthcare costs are going up year on year. You mentioned 14% each year. Is this too late?
No, it isn't. We need a long-term sustainable way of funding our NHS. What we've already done, obviously, is look at the funding for our healthcare service, make sure it matches inflation and more, but also look at the reform of the healthcare service. And the Minister announced in Tynwald last month very much a way of trying to make sure that we put more money into primary care, more money into prevention, to stop people getting ill in the first place and needing to go into hospital. And the vast majority of our funding, the vast majority of our resources are at Nobles, and obviously they're then sending people across for tertiary care. I think it's absolutely right that we look at that long-term funding. We have a medium-term financial plan which aims to take less and less out of reserves, but we need to live within our means. Government are doing our bit in terms of increased productivity and efficiency. We are looking to control government spending, but we know that the healthcare service needs more money in the future. We know that we've got a slightly older population, and we know that the cost of drugs and new treatments is going up every year. So it's absolutely right that we try to balance this with a long-term solution rather than rely upon just income tax and national insurance contributions.
Treasury Minister Alex Allinson speaking to Sean Cowper there. And you can find a link to that consultation in full at manxradio.com. 5:07 now, and a widow who has been campaigning for assisted dying legislation on the island says she burst into tears in the Legislative Council chamber earlier this week when members voted to approve the bill. Sue Biggerstaff lost her husband Simon in May 2022 to motor neuron disease. Now, the assisted dying bill will now be sent for royal assent, and it's expected to be at least 2027 before we'll see an assisted death take place on the island. Sue says she hopes the law is implemented as soon as possible.
I've relived Simon's dying many, many times at many interviews, and to finally see it go through and the hope that, OK, it's not going to happen tomorrow, there's lots of things to sort. But the fact is that now, at some point in the future, no one will have to suffer as Simon did.
Some of the opponents of this legislation, and I know you wouldn't wish that on anyone, but do you think that because they've not had that experience, they maybe don't realise that sort of reality?
Right, so I'm down to my personal opinion now. And my personal opinion is, if you haven't witnessed this, you have no idea what it's like. And when you're with somebody 24/7 and you see them suffering and hear them crying in pain, you can give me your opinion. I've had people come up and tell me their stories, and there's so many out there, heartbreaking stories of this suffering. And yes, I think people who haven't witnessed it, they don't know, and they're protected from it. And I'm not saying palliative care fails, because it doesn't, but Simon ended up with a driver in each limb, delivering pain relief, as well as pain relief through his peg and patches, and it didn't matter what they give him, because MND is supposed to be a pain-free illness, but he had other complications, and as I have said before, his skin was starting to decompose, and their nerve endings, you just can't imagine the intolerable pain he was in, and it's nobody should have to suffer. And this is about freedom of choice. Lots of people have come to me from the religious aspect, and my argument is, if it's against your beliefs, don't do it, but don't take that choice away from anyone else.
Sue Biggerstaff there, one of those who's been campaigning for assisted dying. Let's turn our ears now to something that continues to rumble on 20-mile-per-hour zones. And Onchan MHK Rob Callister has accused the Infrastructure Minister of ignoring Tynwald's will over 20-mile-per-hour speed limits in residential areas. He says a report promised to Tynwald by March 2021 still hasn't been delivered despite repeated motions.
That did not happen. So Mrs. Corlett then put down a further motion in February 2023, pretty much the same, but that report was meant to come back to Tynwald by June 2023. And as far as I'm aware, that report has never been given back to Tynwald. This has created such a public reaction around these 20-mile-an-hour zones. Personally, as a constituency, MHKs, I think there are merits to have some zones that should be designated 20 mile an hour, especially around schools. It's very important that we follow what Tynwald has asked for. So at this present moment in time, I feel that we have a DOI minister that is pushing major regulations onto the public, which is clearly, and this minister particularly, is ignoring public feeling, and it's also ignoring the will of Tynwald, which concerns me deeply.
Onken MHK Rob Callister there, who's written an open letter to the Infrastructure Minister expressing those concerns. Well, we've spoken to the Infrastructure Minister, Michelle Hayward, to get her side too, of course. She acknowledges the oversight, but insists her department has been getting on with rolling out the speed limits as requested by Tynwald. As we heard from Mr. Callister, he thinks that she's ignoring the will of Tynwald, but that's something that she denies.
You're right, there was an original deadline of March 2021, and the then Minister, Mr. Baker, did do a Tynwald members briefing in July 21. I think due to proximity of when the administration was due to end and the looming election, that was all he managed to squeeze in. And he did talk about the implementation plans, but it clearly wasn't the debate that had been asked for. And then when Mrs. Corlett brought the motion back, and gave us a 2023 deadline, that fell just at the point when there was a change of ministers from Minister Thomas to then the Chief Minister took over the department for a while, and it slipped off the radar. I think with regards to the parts A, B and C of the original motion, the department's got on with delivering what was asked of it. And the part D that said come back and report about how you're going to do it is quite a common parliamentary thing that we append when we think that departments might be reluctant to do what Tynwald has just resolved, is we give them a bit of a deadline to tell us how they're going to do it, not that they have to have completed a task by then. And you're right, it's before my time, and I'm really grateful to Mr. Callister for pointing out that the department has slipped up on this.
So can you confirm whether any sort of departmental report on this matter is actually in the works now, and if so, when will that be brought to Tynwald?
There is an implementation plan, and that's what we've been working through in the work that's carried on so far, and that's why Ports and Mary already has their 20 mile an hour scheme in place, and we're working on Douglas and Onken next. So I've committed to sharing both the result of the comments that we've got in regard to the notice about the traffic regulation order, and to sharing our updated implementation plan with what we've done so far and what we plan to do with Tynwald members before that debate in May.
That's the Infrastructure Minister, Michelle Hayward, speaking there. And this is something that's got many of you talking, some in favour, obviously, some against as well. Love to hear your thoughts. Text 166 177, or you can email studio@manxradio.com. Let's turn our attention to the travel now.
Manx Radio Travel, driven by Quayside Tyres and Service Centre.
Quite a few things to be aware of today. The A18 Mountain Road remains closed in its entirety. That's due to a road traffic collision earlier this afternoon. There's been no update from police to tell us otherwise, so we presume this is still closed, so steer clear of that. Ramsey-Lazaire Road is closed between Bircham Avenue and Parliament Square for carriageway repairs. Traffic in and out of Ramsey using Lazaire Road is diverted via Bircham Avenue and Station Road. That's in place until Friday. Through Parliament Square, temporary traffic lights are replacing the main lights for traffic heading north and south too. Over in Onken, temporary lights on Governor's Road, that's between the top of Summerhill and Governor's Bridge, that's for pavement resurfacing. In Douglas, temporary lights on Summerhill near the bottom of the hill, all day for gas work. Also temporary lights on Douglas Promenade between the bottom of Summerhill and Port Jack. Castletown, temporary lights on Victoria Road near the turn for the harbour, but that's for sewer works, that's until Friday as well. And in Colby, temporary lights on the main road near Ballakill Park, turn for water main connection work. Nothing else on the roads that we're aware of though, but if there is something that you spot while you're out and about and think we need to know, then do pop us a text or email as long as it's safe to do so. A text 166 177 or email studio@manxradio.com. Over at the steam packet, nothing out of the ordinary there that I'm seeing. And over in the airport, nothing to be aware of on the departures or arrival board there as well.
Ask how you can spread the cost interest-free at Quayside. You're listening to the Isle of Man's quintessential daily news and current affairs roundup. Update on Manx Radio.
15 minutes past 5 now, and pressure continues to mount on the Public Services Commission as Prospect issues demands for an immediate 4% pay rise backdated from the 1st of April last year. Its members have voted to accept the latest pay offer though, but Unite has rejected it. But Prospect's negotiations officer Mick Hewer thinks it should be paid now, as any future offer won't fall below that figure, nor will it affect ongoing negotiations. I sat down with him earlier today where he told me there's no justification for withholding the payment because there's clear precedent set elsewhere.
If you look at what's happened in Manx Care in 2023 and in relation to 2024, one of the unions there, Royal College of Nursing, rejected that offer. Manx Care were very proactive and decided that they would implement the award on the table at that time, which was 4%, without prejudice to any other discussions. I can see no reason why they shouldn't release the money now.
What about people who say, is it not responsible for the PSC to delay paying out that 4% until it's actually formulated an offer that both sides have accepted?
Well, they wouldn't split the payment. There's no way that the PSC would be able to tell who are Prospect members, who are Unite members, and who aren't a member of either union that's involved in the collective bargaining. The PSC need to get off the fence and pay the 4% across the organisation. And let's not forget, they keep praising members when they're out working in storms and when they're out chopping down trees and putting themselves in danger. But when it actually comes to recognising that in terms of take-home pay, they seem to be turning a blind eye and forgetting what they're saying with one statement and then not following up with another. The money is in the pot to pay the 4%, and our members expected to be paid without prejudice to anything that Unite do.
Negotiations officer Mick Hewer speaking there. The chair of the Public Services Commission has written on Facebook, and he says it's disappointing both unions could not accept, but he hopes for a resolution to be found. Manx Radio understands Unite and the PSC have been involved in further talks this afternoon. 17 minutes past 5 now, and it's been a busy couple of days for local authorities across the island as declarations for candidates standing in April's local authority elections are announced. In the last hour, we've had the final ones come through, but only 5 in total are being contested, meaning 16 local government bodies will see new commissioners take seats without a public vote. In recent months, several commissioners have been encouraging more people to get involved and consider standing for election. Onken is one of the areas where the election is uncontested. Its Commissioner David Quirk has been sharing his thoughts on why the uptake hasn't been as strong as some had hoped. We'll also hear from now former Lezayre Commissioner Vivienne Quain, who's been reflecting on her time in local government too. We'll start with Mr Quirk.
It's probably because certain people are content. But the other thing too is government departments not engaging with local authorities and treating us, in my opinion, this is my opinion, is treating us as like something on the end of your shoe. And that's really strong as far as I'm concerned.
Government interfere too much with local authorities, and civil servants never stop interfering. They just think that we are a non-entity, and I think it's terrible. I've done 20 years on local authorities, and the changes I have seen, I don't really want to know about. It's not what it used to be at all, when we were the main concern and we were consulted on things. Today, things are done without us knowing a thing about it.
Lots happening with local authorities at the moment. You can go to manxradio.com for full details about the local authority elections. It's approaching 20 minutes past 5 now, and it's hoped work will start on Peel's new wastewater plant early next month. The long-awaited facility will stop untreated sewage being pumped into the sea. Manx Utilities Chair John Wannenberg has been giving an update and says it won't be long before work on the site can begin.
The planning application for the new wastewater treatment works for Peel was ratified on the 20th of December 2024, following an appeal being rejected at the recommendation of an independent planning inspector. Since that date, Manx Utilities project team have been working in earnest to allow construction works to commence. Given the complexity of this large multi-million pound construction project, there are a number of activities that have had to be completed prior to making a start. Although since prior to the submission of the planning application, government have had an option to procure the land, a process needs to be completed to finalise that transaction. This is now very nearly complete, thanks to the support from Treasury colleagues, and the land is expected to be in government ownership very soon. There are a number of planning conditions that need to be discharged ahead of commencing works, ranging from biodiversity enhancement to fungi management plans. I am pleased to say that through the collaboration with colleagues at DEFRA, these are all now discharged. Whilst Manx Utilities have been working with a preferred contractor for many months to allow construction to commence as soon as possible, the contract has needed to be finalised. This is a large, complex construction contract which has had to be carefully drafted and negotiated. I'm pleased to say that this contract is now signed and the contractor is now ready to commence as soon as they are able, and that is good news. We are currently targeting a site start early in April. We haven't yet confirmed a date to stakeholders until the land transactions are complete. As soon as we have the land and confirmation of the start date, we will release that along with additional programme information. I and the MUA team look forward to progressing this long-awaited project that will now benefit not only Peel but the whole island environment.
MHK John Wannenberg speaking there. He's the chair of the Manx Utilities.
You're listening to the Isle of Man's quintessential daily news and current affairs roundup. Update on Manx Radio.
Matthew Rennie is confident he'll get back to winning ways as he returns to the ring this Saturday, the 29th of March. Now, Magic Rennie will take on Romanian Octavian Grati in the ring to start his 2025 campaign. The 26-year-old has suffered his first professional career defeat back in December as he lost out on the English welterweight title. However, the Manxman isn't looking behind him.
We'll be getting back to winning ways after the defeat in December, so I'm trying to put that to the past and then concentrate on this one. Funny enough, I did have an opponent from England, but he pulled out, I think, yesterday, and now I've got a new lad who's come in who's a little bit heavier. Watched a few videos of him. He looks quite small, stocky, quite tough. Been there and done it with everyone. It'll be a tough test, it's a test where I just need to be switched on for the entire fight and just enjoy it as well.
I do unfortunately have to mention it. Back in December, you mentioned it earlier, you suffered your first professional defeat. Have you changed anything about your preparation leading up to this one, or have you kept it the same?
I think every camp changes. I think you always try and change things up and add. I think it's always a learning curve, every camp you have. But and then again, it's a different opponent I was fighting last time, so there's obviously different things that we're looking at doing. But like I said, it's just about going out and doing what I normally do and coming out with a win. That's the most important thing, because I know a win over here in Gibraltar on the weekend puts me in a good place for the future to go again and have another crack at titles.
I was just going to allude to that as well. Obviously, that was a title fight. Did that loss affect your career trajectory at all? And if so, how do you get back to title fight opportunities?
Yeah, I don't think so. I don't think it has. I think if anything, it's probably done just as good, because I think it's publicity at the day. It's got me out there. I was on a big stage, and it's got me in with the correct people. And now the same people that put me that was on the Frank Warren card in December, I'm now on the Warren card in Gibraltar, so I must have done something well. And there's plans ahead after this fight. Obviously, I'm not focusing too far ahead, but I know when I do win on the weekend, I've got bigger things to look at in the future. So that's what's driving the motivation, if you know what I mean. I know what comes after this, which is a big motive for me.
That's Matthew Rennie there with Darren Timpson, and he'll be back in the ring this Saturday in Gibraltar. Now, look who joins us. It's Darren Timpson. First am I, Darren. What can you tell us?
First am I. Starting in cycling, Ben Swift and Lizzie Holden have been in action today. Swift of Ineos Grenadiers has been riding in Italy in the Settimana Internazionale Coppi e Bartali. So far, he's completed 3 stages of the 6-stage race. He took a high 5th in the first stage, but followed that up with a 61st and 60th place finishes. Meanwhile, Holden of UAE team ADQ took part in the Women's Classic Bruges, Japan. She finished 96th in the one-day event. Sam Brand and Max Walker were also in action over the last few days. Brand of Team Novo Nordisk raced in Chelo Aglo Tour in France. He came 86th in the one-day race. Elsewhere, Walker from EF Education Easy Post took part in the men's Classic Bruges Japan on Wednesday. Unfortunately, though, he came in 108th. In rugby, Manx former resident Bevan Rodd is back in action for Sale Sharks this weekend. His side will take on Northampton Saints and could go up to 4th in the Premiership standings with a win. They'll be looking to pick up from where they left off against Newcastle Falcons, where they won 39-15 last weekend. And finally, FC Isle of Man have announced a partnership with Shaw Mobile this week. They say the sponsorship will enable the club to deliver sessions to primary school-aged kids.
I tell you what, Darren, I've got your script here in front of me, and I read the news regularly on the radio, and, sometimes it's difficult with pronunciations, specific places in particular. I'm just going through right here. We've got the Sedmana I'm rubbish at this. You've managed to go through 1, 2, 3, 4 very quite tricky names.
We'll pretend like I wasn't practicing all day.
Have you been practicing all day? Is that what it is?
Definitely not.
Okay, all right. Because what I mean, it is. People think it's very easy, and actually, it's not always as easy as you might think.
No, definitely not. I mean, I looked at that one and I had a mini heart attack earlier on.
Yeah, I mean, I actually don't blame you. And that's where we'll have to leave it today. But lots on the way to be getting on with as well. We'll be diving into the archive room on Ireland's Life up next, and then Chris Kinley will be along with greatest hits from 6 o'clock. Maurice Powell has a little light music from 9 o'clock, and then of course Rhee Evans will be here with After Hours. Do remember, if there's anything you heard tonight that you want to take a closer look into, you can head over to manxradio.com. All the stories you've heard there tonight can be found over there. We've also got the Manx Newscast, where all those interviews can be heard in a little bit more depth as well. So till next time, take care, bye-bye for now.